I was in a conversation with Dottie Pepper and the CBS crew, and the phone rang, and I said, "You'll have to excuse me, Dottie. This might be the coolest phone call I've ever gotten in my life." Excused myself and came back to the room in tears and with goosebumps. It's interesting, my 9-year-old asked a bunch of questions to make sure this is in fact a good opportunity for his dad. The 7-year-old said, "But hold on, Dad, you're a boy and I'm a boy, so why don't you just work in boys sports?" Amazing teaching moment.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, Bud, like if all we did were things that looked like us and sounded like us, what are we doing? We've missed the plot. And then we had told our kids we're going to take them out of school to travel around the world. And our 5-year-old looked at me and he said, "Dad, just promise me if we're going to go to Asia, in fact, I need to know, do they sell chocolate milk in Asia?" That's what they asked.
And it's an important question.
Totally.
LPGA Commissioner Craig Kessler, welcome to The Scoop.
I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are at Margaret's Cones and Cups at Omni PGA Frisco Resort and Spa. What'd you go with?
Ooh, I went with a handmade, I think, chocolate chip cookie dough. How about you?
Mint chocolate chip.
Good?
Really good.
This too.
Usually when I start these, I have a working knowledge on the person's upbringing.
Okay.
But I don't with you. So I think we could start there. Just kind of an overview maybe of childhood, and then we can stop at, when you leave for college, and then I'll come back and ask you my next question.
Let's do it. So, born and raised in San Diego, California. Grew up in Carlsbad. Played a ton of golf as a kid. In fact, in many ways, golf for my buddies and I was like our summertime babysitter. Our moms would drop us off at the local Muni executive course for $9. It was unlimited golf, and they'd pick us up when the sun went down. I was kind of the nerd who was involved in like student government, never the stud athlete. And who knows, maybe that'll come back to benefit me one day, but that was my thing. And ultimately I decided to go to Georgetown thinking I wanted to be, like president of the United States one day. And I know we'll pick this up, but realized after going to school in DC after about 3 weeks, I really wanted nothing to do with politics.
Very fair. You were a Boys and Girls Club member, right?
That's right.
What was that experience like?
For camp, spring break, holiday break, sometimes in the summer, that's where my sister and I went. It was an amazing place in Encinitas. We had incredible counselors. We learned how to make friends who we weren't in school with on a daily basis. And I'm grateful to the Boys and Girls Club for what they did to help shape me.
Awesome. So you said golf became part of your life as a kid. Who introduced you to the game originally?
It's a good question. Probably my dad and maybe some neighbors that's what they did on the weekends. Interestingly, growing up, for a lot of people, golf was the thing your dad left you for like 6 hours on a Saturday, and then would come back when he was done. And I know we'll talk about this later, but it's so amazing to see how the game has transformed. It's become so much more inclusive. Our kids, partially because I've spent time there, grew up in hitting bays at TopGolf. And it is such a different sport today than it was for me when I was a kid.
I'll let you have a bite before I get into the next one.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about your time at Georgetown and then Harvard Business School.
Georgetown was amazing. I met students, friends from all over the world, studied international politics, business, and philosophy. And I think what I learned most at Georgetown was how to think. I had professors who challenged me, never gave the answers, but asked really tough questions. I think I learned there for the first time that not having all the answers is actually an okay thing. And learning to show vulnerability and ask questions and learn from others around me, that's a really healthy way to live life. So I loved it. Made my best friends in the world while I was at Georgetown.
Jesuit education. I also went to a Jesuit school, so.
So I'll tell you what, Jesuit education, their motto is cura personalis, care for the whole person. And I love that. It wasn't just about academics or sports or personal life. It was about the whole person. And what a lucky opportunity to go to a place like Georgetown. Harvard Business School was great. Again, met interesting people, traveled all over the world. And I think the thing that I actually learned there, I'll tell you one lesson. At Georgetown, everyone has to take a class called Authentic Leadership Development, at Harvard. And it's funny, on day one, you show up at Harvard Business School and they tell you all these nice things about how you're going to be successful in life and whatever. In this class, what I learned is that every single one of us there, all 990 students, were deeply insecure about at least one thing. It could be your height, your weight, your intellect, your background, your wealth. And learning that all of us had at least one thing we were struggling with privately was completely liberating. It helped me realize like nobody's got it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved learning that lesson there.
That's an important one for sure. So after school, can you take me through your career leading up to this moment?
Yeah, so had two job choices at the end of my time at Georgetown. One was to be a movie producer, and the other was to go work in business. I couldn't decide what to do, so I flipped a coin. It landed on the movie producer side, but while the coin was in the air, I found myself rooting for it to go the other direction. I'm pretty risk averse, maybe a little bit because of my upbringing, and so I went with my gut and joined McKinsey, a big consulting firm. Moved all over the world trying to help companies grow. And then from there went into private equity. I worked at two firms, KKR and Providence Equity. And true story, while I was at Providence, my boss looked at me and he asked, Craig, if you could invest in any company in the world, what would it be and why? And I said, well, Scott, there's this business called TopGolf. Let me tell you about it. A few months later, we had invested $300 million into TopGolf. We were off to the races. And my job was to help the company grow. About 6 months in, joined as chief operating officer, and the rest is sort of history.
What are your favorite moments from that time at TopGolf?
Learning how to lead was a challenging part of the adventure, but probably the most important one. I always thought leadership was about getting to the right answer. What I totally missed was that it's as much about people's hearts as it is about their minds. And bringing people along for the ride, inspiring them, making them feel a part of something bigger than themselves. That's the primary thing I learned in my 6 years at TopGolf.
Wow. So your wife, Nicole, who you met in high school, 3 sons, Ryan, Connor, and Jordan. What is your family like?
There's a lot of energy in the Kessler household.
Okay.
What I lacked as an athlete as a kid, I think our 3 boys have.
Okay.
My wife went to Dartmouth. She was a figure skater and ran track. Her mom placed 4th in the Olympics as a figure skater in 1972. Wow. So thank God that side of the family got her athletic genes. And I think if you spend a night with the Kessler family, you'll walk away both exhausted but also exhilarated because there's a lot of warmth, there's a lot of love, and I just count my blessings every day that we've got the kids we have. I
heard that maybe one of your sons was hoping to give Nelly a Lego set. Has that happened yet?
Not only hoping, he bought the Lego set. And this weekend when he's here at Omni PGA Frisco, he's like been practicing his speech.
Oh my
so
gosh.
When he gives it to her, he's ready to go.
Oh my gosh.
And Nelly knows it's coming. So
pressure to make the cut.
She better.
Yeah.
If not, he'll have to come with me to Michigan next week.
What do you want your sons and other young sports fans to know about women's golf?
The athletes here are unbelievable. I played in the Pro-Am earlier this week with Lydia Ko. Someone said, the thing about women's golf is they play, and this person meant it as a compliment, but probably shouldn't have said it. They play boring golf. And I thought to myself, if boring golf is shooting 64, never missing a green, and not missing anything inside 15 feet, like sign me up to play boring golf too. Yeah.
So you're the author of the Dad Advice Project, which I read on the plane last night. How did that idea and then the book come about?
It's interesting. If we're not feeling well, we go to a doctor. And the reason we go to a doctor is because doctors have pattern recognition. They've seen the same problem 1,000 times in a row and can give advice. I realized when we had our first son that every time I faced a new challenge, I was facing it for the first time. There was no benefit of pattern recognition. So I thought, I should ask a couple of guys to write me a letter on how to be a good dad, and maybe I'll start to learn from the patterns. What was so cool is every time a dad gave me a letter, they all asked to read what everybody else had written. So finally, all 41 of us got together and said, you know what? Let's publish this into a book. We'll call it the Dad Advice Project. And obviously, all the proceeds go to charity.
And there's a big theme of golf in it as well. You talked to Sean Spieth, Nota Begay, Davis Love, right? So I really enjoyed that. I also watched a podcast that you were on with Justin Donald.
Okay.
And you said something interesting about integrating work and family. How will you do that in this role, you think?
It's interesting. A lot of people talk about work-life balance. When you figure out how to do that, let me know. For us, it's work-life integration and making sure our family is a part of the adventure. So if you go back to the TopGolf days, on weekends, we were in hitting bays trying new foods and watching new hire orientation, and our kids were part of the adventure. as I've been at the PGA of America for the last 2.5 years, it's been the same. And my wife is out on the road with me all the time, and she's met some and made some lifelong friends through golf, whether they're players, wives, my colleagues at the association. And I think what's beautiful about that is if dad has to travel for a week or two at a time, he's not disappearing into some mysterious land that the kids aren't familiar with or that Nicole's not comfortable in. They're a part of the adventure, and that makes it doable.
Definitely. Kind of transitioning onto leadership in this commissioner role, what does the process of becoming the LPGA commissioner look like?
I'll let you know once I have my arms fully wrapped around it. I'll tell you, the interview process was amazing. And credit to the search committee and John Viemeyer, the chair of the LPGA, for what they did. What made this so magical was that in addition to a core committee of really talented people, they included player directors. They included feedback from all of our major stakeholders and sponsors. And what's so important about that is the decision they made, and it didn't have to be me, it could have been anyone, reflected the buy-in and the input of so many important folks in the industry. And I'm very, very hopeful that that will set this up to be a successful run.
Where were you when you found out?
I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was Thursday night, I believe, of the PGA Championship when it was official that it was going to happen. I was in a conversation with Dottie Pepper and the CBS crew, and the phone rang, and I said, "You'll have to excuse me, Dottie. This might be the coolest phone call I've ever gotten in my life." Excused myself and came back to the room in tears and with goosebumps. It was pretty cool.
What did your family say?
They're over the moon. They're over the moon. It's interesting. My 9-year-old asked a bunch of questions to make sure this is in fact a good opportunity for his dad. The 7-year-old said, "But hold on, Dad, you're a boy and I'm a boy, so why don't you just work in boys sports?" Amazing teaching moment.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, Bud, like if all we did were things that looked like us and sounded like us, what are we doing? We've missed the plot. And then we had told our kids we're going to take them out of school to travel around the world. And our 5-year-old looked at me and he said, "Dad, just promise me if we're going to go to Asia. In fact, I need to know, do they sell chocolate milk in Asia?" That's what they asked.
And it's an important question.
Totally.
So, I love that. Why do you think you were chosen for this job?
I hate talking about myself. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'm going to bring a lot of heart and a lot of passion to this job. I care deeply about whatever it is that I'm doing, and I think the committee recognized that. I'm a very much people first, care about humans and want to get to know them personally, professionally. I'll listen really, really carefully and ask endless questions. And then look, I also think the time I've spent in sports is really helpful. It's been, 6 or 7 years in golf and learning and knowing the golf landscape and having the trust of people who matter, who can help us take the LPGA to the next level. Hopefully all of those things were seen as assets.
Is there a sports franchise or brand that you think gets it, maybe that you respect or are kind of drawing inspiration off of as you start this role?
Yeah, I think there are a handful of brands, and I'd hate to just name one because I think I'm going to alienate so many, but here's what I appreciate about the brands that I admire most. They're about more than just the bottom line financially. What they care deeply about is recognizing they can make the world a slightly better place through the athletes and the leagues that they sponsor. And the brands that use their megaphone thoughtfully, and carefully to make a difference, and you know who those brands are, those are the ones I admire the most.
What's your biggest hope for the LPGA?
I hope that in 3, 4, 5 years, people look back and some of the things that they're saying now about the WNBA, about the NWSL, these leagues that have had their moment or are having their moment, I can't wait for us to have our turn. And I'll tell you what, after meeting so many of the players out there, their agents, their parents, their stories are inspiring and the world needs to hear them.
You mentioned in an interview Aditi, who's one of my favorite stories.
She's amazing.
Yeah, and it's just, I always think of how golf communities would be lucky to know stories like that. So I totally agree with that. You've said that learning about the emotional side of leadership has kind of molded you. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what that means?
You know what's so interesting? We all put our pants on one leg at a time. And whether you're Nelly Korda, who won 5 times in a row last year and is one of the most incredible athletes of all time, and you compare Nelly to anybody else who's walking on the streets, maybe even watching these athletes here at PGA Frisco this week, we're similar in so many ways because we want to be loved, we want to be heard, we want to make a difference. And it took me a while to learn that. And for the longest time, the people I looked up to, I was nervous to approach. I was nervous to ask them a question. And what I realized was they're just like the rest of us. And when you go into every interaction, whether it's somebody who reports to you, someone you report to, somebody you meet, at a round of golf, like getting to know them as a person will go a long way.
All right, you've got 4 pillars for the LPGA Tour. Can we quickly go through each one?
Yeah.
All right, trust.
Yep.
Talk to me about it.
Everything starts with trust. Hard to get, easy to lose, got to be really careful with it. And if we can build trust with all of our major stakeholders, players, sponsors, the team, the press, it will open up endless opportunities for us.
Visibility.
Look, the more we can highlight the incredible athletes at the LPGA, not just on the broadcast, it certainly starts there, but on all of the media platforms that are available to us, that gives us a chance to highlight their stories, and people will fall in love as these athletes become more visible.
Building fans.
There's a difference between watching and rooting. And I'll tell you my observation from having conversations with folks, from being in circles where there are a lot of golf nuts in my world. People watch the LPGA. We want people to root for the LPGA. And we're going to work really hard to make that happen.
All right, financial future.
Look, at the end of the day, having a strong financial foundation is absolutely critical because capital is the lifeblood of being able to make investments. And making sure that the financial foundation for the second 75 years of the LPGA is even stronger than the first, we're going to be laser focused on that.
All right, so I've got 2 parts left for you.
Okay.
One, I used to do this at the dinner table growing up, so I've brought it into my interview series.
Yeah.
We usually do it of the day, but we're going to do it of your career. A low moment, a high moment, and something that you've learned.
A low moment, a high moment, and something that I've learned. What a question. On the spot, too. Let's start with the high moment. I think the high moment was getting the opportunity to become the chief operating officer at TopGolf. And the reason why, I was 31 years old. I really had no business being in that job. But I got the opportunity. Someone took a bet on me. And having that opportunity at such a young age opened countless doors. There's no way we'd be sitting here having this conversation today if Ken May and Eric Anderson and Tom Dundon and a few others didn't take a shot on me, Scott Merrimo. So I'm grateful for that. The low moment probably also happened at TopGolf, and it was during COVID. We had to furlough 25,000 people overnight, and to shut down a massive operation, to tell people you're not going to get a paycheck because we have to make sure that if the economy comes back, we can reopen our doors. Heartbreaking. I mean, absolutely heartbreaking. And the thing I learned, maybe 2 parts, but they're related. One is leadership requires the head and the heart, and vulnerability is an incredibly powerful tool.
I love those. Thank you. All right, this is just rapid fire, a couple questions.
Let's go.
Dream foursome.
My 3 best friends from college and me.
Favorite book?
Catcher in the Rye.
Ooh, that's a good one. Your handicap?
5.5.
Your favorite show to binge watch?
Entourage.
Song you're listening to on repeat?
A-OK by Tayo Cruz. Ty Verdes, excuse me. Awesome song.
Describe each of your family members in 1 word.
Beautiful, smart, loving, animal.
Favorite family tradition?
Family fivesomes on the golf course. Hawaii is our happy place. Playing barefoot at sunset with our kids and a boombox in the background. I really, if heaven is half as good as that, we'll be in good shape.
Advice you give to someone who wants a career like yours?
Work your ass off.
What are you most excited about as you start your time as commissioner?
The people, the relationships.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the ice cream. It was great.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching The Scoop. We have some awesome guests coming on season 2, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.